wonderful conversations from the living rooms of the speakers to the living rooms of all the families out there. Also, Charity Mobile has hopped on board as a sponsor to support us and get the word out. Charity Mobile is one of the most pro-life cell phone companies out there, which is kind of timely, being that we have one of the pro-life leaders on tonight, Catherine Hadro with EWTN on Pro-Life Weekly. So without further ado, we'd like to bring her in. Let's all fold our hands, actually, and hope that it happens, right? Because our technology's been so bad tonight. Well, there she is. Catherine, thank you so much for joining inspireWord.
Hey, Joe, I'm glad it worked out in the end.
It's amazing in the fact that things happened we had never seen before. I mean, we could show the folks, but I didn't take a picture. We don't need to show them, but it looked like you were in like a night cam almost. And then, so it was just the craziest thing. I don't know. Anyway, we made it happen. Thanks for inviting all of us into your living room and taking time tonight to talk with us. For those that may not be familiar with you, which is probably very few, but why don't we start with your background and kind of, where you grew up into how you got into the career you're in, and kind of give us your overview, a quick story.
Oh, sure. Well, first off, I'm so happy to be here. This is like the social highlight on my calendar this week. So I'm just glad to, be in community, even though it is online this week. But yeah, my name is Catherine Hadro. I'm the host of EWTN Prolife Weekly. But a little bit about me. I grew up in Florida, went to Florida State University, majored in advertising. Really thought that is what I was going to pursue in my career. But 2 weeks before I graduated, I landed an interview with EWTN because I heard they were launching a news network out of Washington, D.C., which was just a dream of mine. I grew up really watching EWTN and watching Mother Angelica alongside my own mother. So when I heard that I'd have possibly a chance at working at this intersection of, journalism and my Catholic faith, I was thrilled at the aspect of that. So interviewed with EWTN, landed in Washington, D.C. 7 years ago, which I cannot believe. It's flown by. Originally, I was a producer over at EWTN News Nightly, and about 3.5 years ago, about 3.5 years ago, became the founding host and producer of EWTN Prolife Weekly. And it's such an honor. I'm a wife of a little over 2 years, and I have 3 siblings, and all my family's in Florida, so I miss them dearly, especially as we're all separated right now. But again, grateful for technology where we can all be connected,
That's great. Well, I mean, the fact that you're here is fantastic. We can kind of almost have a conversation with you, feel, in your living room. And, how are you, real quick, the least important stuff, how are you dealing with the weather coming from Florida to D.C.?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's a real question. And I have to say, I think like the seasonal impact of it being so dark and cold, it's real. And like I don't notice it until it gets to be the very beginning of spring. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I so happy all of a sudden? And it's just because the sun really does have an impact. So I miss it. But you know what? The good thing about having family in Florida is you have like a free vacation. You have a free place to stay, free meals, and a vacation date. So that's a silver lining there. But thanks for asking. It's a real question. It gets cold up here, and it's funny because I'm in Virginia, and a lot of people in Virginia don't consider this the North. But to me, having grown up in Florida, I'm like, well, this is the most North I'm ever going to live.
Right. Well, hopefully you're making headway there in one of the more important cities in the United States when it comes especially to the pro-life fight. So we're glad you're there. And, jumping into kind of some more the meat of it. I've seen you. I've watched you now for a long time. And you have the talent as a reporter easily to be one of the next, female reporter or anchor on Fox News. But you chose EWTN, right? Not that anyone's less or better, but a lot of everyone growing up wants to be in secular media and, wants to become the next, whoever. Did you always want to be in the pro-life movement and dedicate your life and your career to the more important things, let's call it, in life of spreading the word of God? And second to that, did you ever have that hesitation of which way to take your career, secular or, more toward the faith-based?
Oh my goodness, I have so many thoughts with this. Well, first off, I never imagined, never fathomed I would work in the pro-life movement in any capacity or have any role whatsoever. I never could have dreamed of it. I mean, EWTN Prolife Weekly didn't exist until a little over 3 years ago. So I never imagined it. Not to say I was never pro-life. I've always considered myself pro-life, and over the past, I'd say decade, have gotten increasingly engaged and passionate and more informed. But in regards to coming to, that like crossroads of, okay, the secular route or the religious, media route, I never imagined I would work in Catholic media.
Interesting.
In fact, I mentioned how I really thought I was going to pursue advertising, and I've always had in my heart broadcasting and working in journalism in some capacity and working in media. But Florida State didn't offer a journalism major. So that's why I was really preparing myself to work in advertising, and I was excited about it. And I had a position lined up in New York City. And so that's what I was planning to do, was to pursue advertising in New York City. And when this opportunity to work at EWTN and to help launch, their DC office, and to help launch EWTN News Nightly in Washington, DC came along, it was one of those rare moments when God just makes something so clear to you. Right. And I wish we got that more often. Those prayers. I really hope other people can relate to this, where it's like, okay, God, like, what's the next step? Like, hit me over the head with a frying pan and tell me, like, where do you want me to go? This was one of those moments where it was like, okay, never imagined I would begin my career in Catholic media, but the path just became so clear, and I had great peace and great conviction. And I think that's usually an indicator that that's the step you're supposed to walk towards in. But when it comes to the pro-life movement, as I mentioned, I'd always been pro-life, but I never imagined, how would that make sense that I would work in the pro-life movement if I was planning to work in either broadcast or advertising? But I will tell you this, Joe, when I was my freshman year in college, I mentioned I went to Florida State University, this major, secular university, 40,000 undergrad. Yes, good old. I went to the March for Life for the first time, which is in Washington, D.C., bussed up there with 50 Floridians. And you can't help but leave the March for Life more convicted for the pro-life cause. You can't help that. And I started to become more interested in the pro-life movement after that. And I went to a pro-life talk on Florida State's campus, maybe like a month later after the March for Life. And it was Dr. Alveda King was sharing her witness on the campus.
Wow.
And I left that talk so moved. And I'll tell you this, I felt like God was saying, Catherine, you will be involved in the pro-life movement someday. And it was this passing thought, and I was like, that's strange. Okay. I remembered it and then didn't think about it. And then 10 years from then is when I got the job at, not even 10 years from then, like 7 years from then is when I got the job at Pro-Life Weekly. So it's just so cool to see God's plan and how he really equips you one step at a time, doesn't he? Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. Well,
he'll like move your heart one step at a time, and you keep walking, and you're like, oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I see what you did, and I need to remember that myself sometimes. So I continue to trust in him more deeply.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to talk more about that here in a little bit, because I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of but students, young adults tuning in, seeing this in the future, that are in that discernment period, and they're wondering what God has in store for their lives. And just already, the whole point of this conversation series, inspireWord, is to inspire people during a time of, we're all going through struggles, whether it's the COVID or anything. There's always problems going on in everyone's lives. So for you being, in my opinion, an awesome role model for any female or male want to be journalist or want to be anchor or reporter, that what you've done with how you turn it around, going from a Florida State University to end up on EWTN is just amazing. Because anybody, God, you just don't know where God's calling. I myself went to a public university, Miami, Ohio, And now I'm working on the. Have you heard of it?
My cousin went there. I have a lot of family in Cleveland.
Oh, wow.
Went there, and I know that Nick Lachey went there. That's a very random trivia fact that I know.
yeah, the old 98 degrees. Nick Lachey is a Cincinnati, hometown Cincinnati boy, which actually, I usually am in Austin, Texas, but I'm visiting family and broadcasting there for tonight. So, you brought up a bunch of great questions from there, and I'm getting text questions, which we'll get to from the audience. And then Maria Miller, thanks for your nice comment. I mean, we see a lot of people coming in and saying hello to you through this. The COVID, for instance, and pivoting or overcoming challenges. How has it affected the Pro-Life Weekly? Just quickly over and
Right.
you guys had to adapt to.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, no one saw that coming. This really is uncharted territory. And I have to say, I'm really grateful to EWTN because from day one, they made it clear everyone's health and safety is a priority. And it's this balance because media is essential. And there's a lot the pro-life movement needs to continue to be paying attention to right now. We can't let our guard down. A lot of abortion businesses are staying open right now. There are a lot of different laws to keep our eye on. So our production crew is so incredible. And this living room where I'm coming to you from right now, Joe, this is where I've been broadcasting the past 3 to 4 weeks from my living room. It looks different on air, but I mean, we have lights, we have camera, we have this monitor screen. And I have to tell you, it looks so similar to when I'm in the studio. It's fascinating what you can do with technology, but it's definitely thrown it's thrown everyone's year for a loop. We had certain events. I had certain, travel plans, of course, and certain stories I thought I was going to be covering that just, that's postponed indefinitely. Right. So it's changed things, but I'm blown away at the innovation at EWTN and honestly grateful that I have a job, grateful for health and grateful for the opportunity to keep bringing stories to our viewers because our mission is to continue to bring people the truth. And I have to say, I've been hearing an outpouring from viewers in the past weeks who are just so grateful to EWTN as, churches are closed. I know they're starting to reopen now in certain states, but with churches being closed, so many people are discovering EWTN for the first time. And I have to say, it's really reinvigorated my heart for our mission. It's ultimately we are here to bring the truth to viewers, and again, grateful I can continue to do that.
That's wonderful. Well, I want to keep talking about EWTN and your experiences working there, but I got a text message, not personal text, but we have text messages coming in. We have other ways to ask you questions. I want to stop and take this one because it's kind of interesting. It's from a Taylor S. in Louisiana. She says that let's see here. Let me try and paraphrase. She's a wannabe journalist, an aspiring journalist, and would love to be an anchor at some point. What is your advice to those of us that are in this field, and how we can hopefully achieve and get into what you're doing?
Absolutely. Well, without knowing the specifics of, which college, which school, there's a lot of different routes when it comes to journalism. And so as I mentioned, I majored in advertising, but throughout college, I was working at the news department on our campus's radio station and interning multiple times at our local CBS affiliate. And if you want to get in broadcast journalism and become an anchor, just have to go for it. It's competitive, but get those internships, get that experience, get that reel, and just go for it. It is important to get those internships and get those contacts. And I really advise going to different seminars and conferences as well, just to hone your skills. There are different philosophies. Should I pursue a journalism graduate degree? I don't know. I think maybe, depending on which specific route you want to take. But my philosophy has been, just get into the newsroom, because once you get into the newsroom, that's when you get the most invaluable experience, and you get to learn just the vocabulary that is in the newsroom, and it just becomes second nature to you. And I also just want to share this. When I interviewed for EWTN News Nightly 7 years ago, I flew up to DC, and I thought I was interviewing to be a reporter. I'm 22 years old. I'm going to be a reporter on this global network. And I interviewed, and they said, we want you to work here, but we don't have reporter positions available. And so I was like, okay, I'll take this position. It was that of a researcher, which is this producer position behind the scenes, booking guests, doing research. And I said, I'll take this position, but I really want the chance to get on air soon. And about a year later, this opportunity showed itself where I had lined up this interview for another reporter. That reporter could no longer do it. So they said, okay, Catherine, go out and do it. And from there on, I was reporting regularly. So you also can never predict what's going to happen. Just get in that newsroom.
I love it. I mean, your advice is kind of similar to my father's, who always tells me, half of life is just showing up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such simple advice, but it's so true, right? You start getting involved in something you're passionate about, and it leads to things that you don't expect. And the next thing you know, you're in the middle of something great, which you found yourself in. Again, thanks for inviting us into your living room and allowing us to see the behind the scenes of how everything, all the graphics. This is such a great thing for our viewers. They feel like they're in your living room. We're with Catherine Hadro right now. If you are tuning in, host of Pro-Life Weekly, the face that you see on EWTN, she's invited us in to have some conversation, just candidly and giving advice. Please chat us your questions. We want to keep fielding these. I do want to jump over, since we've talked about EWTN so much so far. Can you give us some behind the scenes, or what it's like to actually work there for the aspiring anchors or aspiring media people that may be watching?
Yeah, well, it's been an exciting time. As I mentioned, I came on board as we were launching and opening our DC studio 7 years ago. So I came in when there was still construction happening. We were literally still building the studio. So that was such an incredible experience to be on the ground and part of it, even though, because our headquarters are in Birmingham, Alabama. Mm-hmm. So this was its, first time having a major studio and newsroom in DC. So that it felt like a startup, but the environment, they built a chapel. We have a chapel right next to our, what's called the control room in the studio. So our studio shares a wall with the chapel. And I have to say, as soon as, the Blessed Sacrament was present, you felt this peace. And the fact that we have Mass regularly, not right now because we're not in the newsroom, but there's Mass, there's confession. To have a chaplain, Father Patrick Mary is our chaplain in Washington, D.C., it's such a gift. And to know that our network really prioritizes family, and it feels like a family working there, it's such a gift. I never had the opportunity to meet Mother Angelica. A lot of people ask me that. But she, the point I came on, she was very, towards the end of her life. So I never had the chance to meet her, but just constantly hey, oh my goodness, I pray that we are carrying on Mother's mission into 2020, into this new technology that I'm sure she never could have fathomed. But it's really an honor. As I mentioned, I grew up watching EWTN. I grew up watching Mother Angelica with my mom and grandmother, and I have a distinct memory. In 5th grade was when she had this very severe stroke. And I remember 5th grade, 10 years old, going into my classroom, and there was a chance to pray, for intercessions before lunch. And every day I said, I asked my 5th grade class to pray for Mother Angelica. And then in 6th grade, I went to a Catholic school, and they asked us, bring in a picture of your hero. And I brought in a picture of Mother Angelica, and they hung all our heroes on the wall. And even the teachers, they didn't know who Mother Angelica was. So I was explaining to them, oh, well, she founded EWTN. This is her story with $200 in a garage in Alabama. And I forgot about that. And then, I was 10. And then when I was 22, thinking back on that and oof, that just gives me the chills. That's so cool. How God knew that desire in my heart and my love for this mission. Oh my gosh, it gives me the chills right now just thinking about it.
That is really, it's true. When you really pray for something, God knows the passions of our hearts. And I always like to think life is like a sailboat. Even though you're trying to get to a point, it has to go back and forth. And when you veer off course, as long as you're trying to do His will, He'll bring you back. But that's just great to hear, and it's inspiring for all of us to hear, especially the folks that are asking questions or the aspiring media journalists or anchors, to hear your story on this, because it's not like you had a perfect plan either, and here you are.
That's the thing. You cannot plan. I think we're all relearning that lesson right now.
Right.
All of us who had made New Year's resolutions and bought a planner. It's like,
okay. Well, let's get into the COVID stuff a little bit, and then we'll get into some more questions we got coming in. You're also married. Let's say home life. You're also married to another reporter. Is that right?
Yes.
Not to get into, I can only imagine what the first dates were like with you both interrogating each other. But what is that like? What is that like? And also maybe share. That also brings another question. How do you keep peace with both of you being in the media constantly every day, and everyone that's watching has their own careers, and the amount of non-peace and distraction and trouble with prayer, just frustration and all the human emotions? How do you guys keep peace in a high stress, media type of situation like that, where you're dealing with the news day in and day out together?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to do my best to attempt to answer that. First off, yes, I'm married to Matt Hadro, who's the senior DC correspondent for a Catholic news agency. So we met at work. CNA falls under EWTN News. So we met at work and been married a little over 2 years now. And that was, I remember in dating, that was and we still have to strike that balance today. We both are so passionate about Catholic news. So we'd oftentimes on our dates, be like, oh my gosh, okay, then tell me about this, what happened there, and oh my gosh, you should interview this person, and just really dive in, and then to learn to draw boundaries, like, okay, let's not talk about work. But I'm so grateful that I am married to someone who shares so many of the same passions, and he is such a good mind for me to bounce ideas off of. I feel like I married him for his good judgment, and he's just so, oh my gosh, he's my favorite person. And just one good advice I heard when we were dating was, you should marry someone you enjoy spending time with. Somebody you can be on a long road trip with. And I'm so glad I followed that advice, because I never get sick of him. And now, because our dining room table is our shared office for the past, 2 months, I'm so glad we never get sick of each other. But in regards to maintaining peace when consuming the media, this is an ongoing lesson we're both trying to get better at. And I think all the more it's important in 2020, in the age of social media, during an election year, during a pandemic, and so something that I've really had to get better at is learning to detach myself from the news as well. And also, I love social media. I could be scrolling on Twitter endlessly. And I fall into that temptation frequently. But to stop myself and be like, okay, am I on here because I'm looking for something, or am I just mindlessly being on here? And social media is really helpful for bringing light, really important conversations that need to happen, and even important voices out there having these conversations. But I think just kind of learning, okay, so I can limit my social media intake and extract all that good stuff, very quickly and efficiently without having to mindlessly be on there. And I found that has really helped with my peace. And even setting a time limit, like, okay, it's 9 p.m. or whatever curfew you want to give yourself for social media. I'm not going to look on there anymore. And I've heard this advice and trying to follow it myself and getting better at it, but don't look at the news until you read the good news,
Wow.
Read the gospel first thing in the morning, spend your time in prayer, steep yourself in scripture, talk to God. Okay, now check your work emails, check social media, read the news. But I think always not allowing yourself to lose peace, remembering that Christ is the Prince of Peace, being informed, but not being obsessed. Not being obsessed with every latest detail, just knowing what you need to know to be helpful for you and your profession and your family, And then, okay, I don't need to keep going down this information machine.
Wow. I want you to keep going on that topic. We got a couple other things we want to talk about, but I just want to reiterate something you just said. Everybody needs to write that down. Don't read the news until you've read the good news, the Word of God. I've never heard someone say that before, and that is definitely something I'm walking away with from this conversation, Catherine. You have touched me tonight with that.
No, that's kind. And it's a reminder I'm always giving myself too, because isn't that cell phone so tempting?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the world of social media, like you said, and everything, it's so easy to get down rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, it's an hour later, and what am I reading right now?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk real quick about prayer practices and what you've learned with your husband, something serious. So what kind of prayer practice would you say or to suggest to other married couples, leaders of families that you and your husband may have learned during this COVID lockdown? And then what's something fun that you're going to walk away with that you've learned from the COVID lockdown with your husband?
Oh, I love that question. Okay, so with the prayer aspect, I've become increasingly grateful for prayer routines during this time, during quarantine, shelter in place, social isolation, all of it, because it's easy to lose rhythm and routine. And in the beginning of this, when we started our conversation, you're saying, it is Monday. And I was like, oh, glad you reminded me, because it's easy to forget even what day it is. So to have that, to really give yourself a prayer schedule has been something that's been really helpful for me. My favorite, it's my favorite prayer practice. My favorite thing is when my husband and I begin our day reading through the daily readings, reading through the first reading, reading through the gospel, giving ourselves 15 to 30 minutes of just silently reading through it, sitting with it. What verse sticks out with you? What is Jesus telling you today? And then my favorite thing is we turn to each other, morning cups of coffee, and just say, okay, what stood out to you? And there are times, and this gives me the chills. There are times where, and during some really kind of important decision-making times in our marriage as well, where we both feel like God was telling us the same thing, that morning. That happens sometimes and gives me the chills. Most mornings, we're extracting and hearing the Lord tell us something else. Like He'll sit with one verse, whereas I just completely read over that verse and I was fixated on a different one. So my favorite is just to sit and talk and be like, okay, what did God say to you, this morning? What stood out to you? And something that we really started doing, that we've carried with us from Lent, is doing that daily rosary. And I am totally one of those people who throughout my childhood, throughout my adolescence, it's like, okay, the rosary, I know I should. Catholic guilt, I really should. But oh my goodness, what a gift the rosary is for us. What a gift. And when you're praying the rosary, something that really helped me is, it really is, you're sitting with our mother or walking with our mother. When you have those rosary beads in your hand, you are holding her hand. And we all have to discern different things. We all have to endure different things. But when you're talking with our mother, the Queen of Heaven, every single day, she's going to be guiding you and helping you to navigate different discussions. And so my favorite thing is just, after dinner, going for a rosary walk with my husband. And I have felt greater peace since we've done that in our marriage. I have felt greater peace. And I really encourage anyone who happens to hear this, if you're like me, like, okay, I know the rosary, like I should, like, don't, like, it's a gift, like just really commit to it, and you will find that time is filled with great peace.
That's beautifully said. I mean, because the rosary is kind of like going, when you're going to the gym and you're working out, right? You do that to get stronger and stronger. The rosary is a great foundation to that routine, and it only great things come of it. And I was in that same position. I still fail today to say the daily rosary, but I've gotten much better at it as I've gotten older because it becomes more important. Hopefully the most it comes important to them when they're 16 on, but again, another great piece of advice. Quickly, Catherine, the mission of your work, Pro-Life Weekly on EWTN. Can you kind of give some quick tips? You know, I know this has got a loaded conversation. We've got to do a whole nother episode on this, but how people can maybe gently but effectively talk about abortion. Abortion has become such a hot topic in our culture today. And it normally sets off a bomb, you know, and you never know if you're talking to someone that may have had one. You know, so what would be your tips of what you found, you know, over time or even the last 3 years of doing the show on how people might approach it to make it a little bit more effective?
Yeah, I'll give the top insight that comes to my mind just speaking to you right now. The top insight is when I stop thinking of the individual, I'll back up. When I'm in a studio or in my living room, you know, looking at a teleprompter and a camera, it is so easy for me to speak about the pro-life issue because that camera doesn't talk back. And so I just want to acknowledge, I know it is hard when you're having a conversation with someone. I know that the topic of abortion and the pro-life issue, I know it's difficult. So I just want to acknowledge that. And something that helps me is that when this conversation, when that topic comes up with someone, what helps me is to remember I'm talking to a person, to an individual. I'm not talking to a statistic. I'm not talking, you know, don't imagine the worst case scenario that someone will say to you. And I think we often think of, oh my gosh, abortion is 50-50, you know, pro-life or pro-abortion. And while it does, you know, fall that way in the polls, when you really dive into the polls, you see that people who maybe they'll choose to give themselves that pro-abortion or pro-choice label, but a lot of times they often want restrictions on abortion as well, you know, and they just don't want to have that pro-life label. But their view is often not that extreme. And so when you remember that and you remember, you know what, I don't know these person's views. Let me speak the truth and just to remember there's going to be something here we can agree on, you know, and just go from there. And also we spoke about peace earlier. I want to reiterate that. Maintain that peace because that will stay with people, you know, and again, you never know the person you're speaking with, where they've been, what their experience is, the wounds they carry. Be that peace to them. And that will carry a message much more powerfully, you know, much more powerfully.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to ask you here in a minute from an inspiration perspective, which is the theme of our conversation series. Spiritually, who or what prayer or whatever is your most inspiration? And then from a worldly perspective, whether it be, you know, someone you looked up to in your career or a book would be most inspiration. But first, I want to mention to everyone to make sure that they go to inspireWord.com, just like it sounds, inspireWord.com, sign up on the mailing list. You'll be able to share this conversation with Catherine, with all your friends and family forever. We're going to post it on there, along with many other conversations we've had with faith-based leaders from all over the world. So please go to inspireWord.com and definitely sign up there so you can watch future shows and stay in tune with this one. Also, thanks again to Charity Mobile, Solidarity Health Share, and Catholic Order of Foresters for being such great supports and bringing people like Catherine Hadro in her own living room, allowing us FaceTime style activity to hang out and talk with her behind the scenes, you know, with someone that's in the public eye more than not. So Catherine, to close out, it's 35 minutes. This was only supposed to be 30. I've had so much fun. I'm sorry. That's probably my fault. Could you maybe, you know, close it out with your inspirational thoughts on from a spiritual perspective and then from a, you know, living in the world perspective?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And I'll have to devote more time to this, really contemplate and think about it. But my go-to spiritual inspiration is Saint Therese of Lisieux. And I know she's a popular patron saint, confirmation saint. She's mine as well. But you know what? I think during this time of the pandemic, it's easy to feel, you know, what can I feel I'm stuck in my house. Like, you know, what can I do? What kind of impact can I be having right now? How can I serve God? I'm stuck in my house. Saint Therese was a cloistered nun who died at the age of 24. When you look at her life, you should think, we shouldn't know anything about her. And yet she's a doctor of the church and a patron of the missionaries. you can serve God the greatest by doing his will. And it is in those small things, whether it's even cleaning the dishes in your kitchen, or, it's talking on the phone with your friends or family, or those little small things you think don't matter. If you do it with great love, you are glorifying God. And so St. Therese is just constantly my inspiration, especially during this time. It's like, okay, it's easy to feel cloistered right now. And so just asking for her guidance. Oh my goodness. And then when it comes to, not necessarily Catholic inspiration, but just other leaders, oh my goodness, I really want to devote some more time to thinking about that. I will say there are people who are so excellent in their craft who are in the secular media. And I think it is an important reminder that, we can't paint the secular media as big, bad, there's a lot of great people out there who are pursuing excellence and greatness. Oh my goodness. So when it comes to, I just want to kind of share that too. And you can really extrapolate the good as well and see virtue there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, folks, we're with Catherine Hadro here, Pro-Life Weekly, who has been so kind and generous to share her words of wisdom, her career path, everything she's done. Catherine, thank you for hearing the call and saying yes to becoming now a pro-life leader, through EWTN, and just hosting just an amazing show, which touches so many hearts. Keep up the great work. We definitely want to have you on again as a follow-up in the future. I hope you had as much fun as we did.
I really did. This was a social highlight of my week here. So I'm so grateful.
We'll keep that going, and we'll ask all of our people to share this, and you guys too. And thank you again, and God bless you for all the work you're doing.
God bless you.